My partner has been through a lot. We had been dating for 2 years and planning a life together when she was diagnosed with cancer. At the time she was in school for a dual graduate degree program and managed to finish it. Treatment was rough on her and she struggled a lot through it, and hasn't done well mentally dealing with the unfairness of it all. How different her body is after surgeries, and the fear of it coming back. All perfectly understandable, and I've been as supportive as I can throughout it all. Now all that said, she went into the graduate programs after we started dating, and one of the degrees was at a very expensive school for something that was only related and not required for the work she planned on doing, which would never pay very well. I questioned her about it gently at the time, but she was adamant about getting the expensive degree. It was her life. And we agreed it would be fine, because we could utilize public service loan forgiveness to pay off her debt that would total $100K. This was before cancer. I earn a considerable amount more than her. When we started dating I made 4x, and even with her degrees I make 3x what she does. I've always been happy to spend money on her. And after having moved in together over a year ago and proposing shortly after, I really went into the mindset of it being our money. When we moved in she was finishing her degrees and I covered 100% of our bills, including some tuition costs for an extra semester since she was slightly delayed by her treatment. This was totally fine because school was her job and she'd be able to contribute when she graduated, and even though I make much more, if we are both working full-time jobs it felt fair. Now that she has graduated and started working, she is miserable at her job mostly because she is incredibly anxious that she isn't doing it well, and doesn't feel like her school prepared her. She was already prone towards anxiety and depression, she takes medicine for it. But mentally she is in a very bad spot because of all this. On top of that she feels like she doesn't doing enough for her health, mostly exercise, to keep her healthy to reduce the cancer from coming back, but she says she is too tired after work to do much else than occasionally go on a walk. Recently she got the idea in her head to start working half weeks to give her more time to exercise and stress her out about work less. She says not knowing for sure how long she'll live has changed her priorities about working. Before all this she was a pretty driven type of personality, working multiple jobs. But working part-time doesn't meet the requirements for public service loan forgiveness. We've talked about it extensively and she feels it is important for her to work part-time. But I am not very comfortable with the idea for many reasons. I get where she is coming from in her needs, but feel like she is looking for a quick fix to her problems. That puts us in a pretty big hole financially because she is so miserable instead of fully dealing with her problems. I'd be more okay with it if it was short-term while she sorted through some things, but she says she just wants more time to exercise and be stress-free, so she doesn't know when that would end. I just feel like she is taking our relationship, which is already unbalanced, and asking to make it a lot more so, and solely because she is in a position to do so because of my job. We can financially afford it, but I haven't been able to come to terms about the disproportionality it would create in our relationship. P.S. My longtime partner wants to start working half-time to relieve her work stress and give her more time to take care of her health, but it makes me uncomfortable because she has $100,000 of debt and it would make our relationship very unbalanced. A while back, my brother married a woman who had an 11-year-old son named Billy. A year later my sister-in-law gave birth to a little girl. 2 years later, she gave birth to a boy. Billy, who was 14 by this time, was treated like an outsider. My sister-in-law and brother saw him as a burden who spoiled their picture-perfect family. If you asked my sister-in-law how many kids she had, she would say 2. Billy started acting out. He got involved with a bad group of kids and started getting into trouble. He started failing all of his classes. He eventually got into drugs and was suspended from school. My brother and sister-in-law were fed up with him. I asked my brother if Billy could spend the summer with me and my husband. We have a hobby farm and I thought maybe getting away from his life for a while could help him some. Well, they were more than happy to get rid of him, my SIL's words. It was kind of rough the first few weeks. He had a lot of anger issues. But my husband kept his hands and mind busy doing work on the farm. And we both made sure that he knew he was loved and wanted. By August, he was a totally different kid. He wanted to keep living with us, but my sister-in-law insisted that he come home. After 2 months, he went back to his old ways due to his parents' indifference. They ended up sending him back to us, and he lived with us throughout high school. He ended up being an A/B student and kept with a really great group of kids. He got involved in baseball and got a scholarship to a local university. He's 22 now and is in his last year of school. He's engaged to a really great girl. When he was 16, he started calling me mom, and he started calling my husband pops. He never really had much to do with his mom, and he had nothing to do with my brother. He saw them on holidays when the whole family came over. His mom has tried to have a relationship with him the past few years, but he has avoided her. On Christmas, sister-in-law was over, and for whatever reason, she opened my desk drawer and found a birthday card from Billy where he said, "To the best mom ever. Thanks for loving me and giving me a chance." She was devastated. She ended up texting Billy, confronted him and asked him if she would be presented as mother of the groom at his wedding. He told her that he no longer considered her his mom and wasn't even sure if he wanted her at the wedding at all. My sister-in-law is now insisting that I make it clear to Billy that I am not his mother and that he is not to refer to me as such. My brother is also very upset with me. Even my parents are pressuring me to do what sister-in-law wants for the sake of peace. Honestly, I consider Billy to be my son. I count him in with all of my children. I feel like telling Billy not to present me as mother of the groom could possibly be misinterpreted as me saying that I don't feel like he's my son, and I don't even want to take a chance of that happening. If he decides to present his real mom as mother of the groom, I will 110% support him. I have zero desire to tell Billy not to call me mom, and I absolutely won't do it because I know it would destroy him, and it would kill me. My sister-in-law insists that by not doing it, I'm making it impossible for her to have a relationship with him, and I'm being selfish. I have talked to Billy about it some. He doesn't like to talk about his mom at all. He basically just said that he doesn't see her as a mom and has for sure decided he doesn't want her at the wedding. I understand and respect that. Since my wife and I got married 3 years ago, things have been off. I know that people grow and change with time, but around our wedding, my wife changed drastically. She bleached her dark brown hair blonde right before the ceremony. And I honestly thought I was in the wrong church for a split second when she came down the aisle. We moved into our house right after the honeymoon, and she went into full domestic mode. We'd shared cleaning duties before, but once we moved into the house, she became insistent on doing everything before I could even get to it. Since this is our first house, I thought it was some kind of homeowner nesting thing, but it never stopped. Her hair color is none of my business, and I think most people would be happy not to have to clean. So I honestly didn't really think much of either of those things at the time. The big thing has always been how closed off she got after the wedding. When we were dating, she'd tell me long rambling stories about her feelings and rant to me when she was upset and all that. And I liked hearing about what was going on inside her head. After the wedding, that stopped pretty abruptly. If I ask her how her day is, she will only ever tell me that it was fine or super. She doesn't talk to me about her feelings anymore, ever, even when I explicitly ask, "How do you feel about X?" She also stopped telling me about anything important that happened to her. About a year after we got married, her grandfather died. Did she tell me she'd lost her grandfather? No. She told me that she had to go to a conference for work on the other side of the country, which I thought nothing of. On the second day she was gone. Her older brother texted me to tell me that my in-laws had really missed seeing me at the funeral. When I called her to ask why in the ever-loving hell she didn't tell me, and then lied about it, all she would say was, "I didn't want to trouble you. You have a lot on your plate." After that, she went on a couple of spontaneous family trips. She's really close to her family, so the first time she said she was going camping with her brother at their alma mater. I didn't think a lot of it other than to be slightly disappointed and confused that I wasn't invited, because her brother's cool and the three of us go camping together a lot. But the second time, I started hearing alarm bells. I'd like to say I'm a more secure man, but after the second spontaneous family trip, my wheels started spinning and I started to think that maybe she was cheating. This was a weird insecurity in the back of my mind for a while, since she wasn't showing any other big signs of cheating. She wasn't guarded about her phone and hadn't changed her routine // appearance. A few weeks ago, she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon about it until I asked her how many weeks along she was, and she nonchalantly said about 12 or 13. She'd been pregnant for like 3 months before she even bothered to tell me. She's not really showing at all, and she doesn't usually drink, so I had been completely in the bloody dark. I honestly hadn't even suspected. That was kind of it for me. I was sure she was cheating, and that it wasn't my kid. I thought there was no possible way that a woman would keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband for 3 months. So I snooped. Yes, I know I was wrong, but I wanted proof that she'd been having an affair before I moved out. One of my best buddies from college is a divorce attorney, and when I asked him what I should do, he sent me the info for a key logger. I installed it on my wife's laptop and was prepared for the worst. Now, I feel like what I found is somehow worse than her cheating. I didn't find any steamy messages, but I found out that she keeps a diary in a Word document that she writes in every day. I know I should have just stopped once I knew she wasn't cheating, but once I saw my name in her diary, I couldn't stop. I read all of it. All 7 separate documents, going back to way before we'd even met. Turns out she's not cheating. She's depressed, hates herself, and has absolutely no trust in me. All of the stuff I've been confused and bothered by has some kind of sad, self-loathing explanation. She hates having blonde hair, but she writes, I know he'd divorce me if I went back to being a brunette. Because wives are supposed to be blonde almost every week. The wives are supposed to be thing is tangled up in everything. She thinks wives are supposed to be quiet, which is why she doesn't talk to me anymore. She thinks wives are supposed to make things easier for their husbands, not harder. Which is why she didn't tell me when her grandfather died. It just goes on and on and on. She didn't tell me when she got a huge promotion and a raise because he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he knew I made more money than he does. Men can't handle that. It hurt to know that she thinks of me as some kind of one-dimensional 1950s husband. And I've been racking my brain to think of anything I could have done to make her think this way. What I can't handle is that she'd lied about the big stuff. I honestly don't know if I can forgive her for not telling me about the miscarriages. The spontaneous family trips were actually her miscarrying 2 of our children, one at 5 weeks, the other at about 10. She went and stayed with her parents while she was recuperating, and her brother and sister came to support her. But not me. I didn't get to be there for her, because she thinks I would leave her immediately if I knew that she'd killed our children. She's convinced that she caused both miscarriages because she smoked pot for a long time before we got married. For what it's worth, it sounds like her family tried both times to get her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She finally told me about this pregnancy because her parents threatened to tell me she didn't. I'm just absolutely confused. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just so baffled because everything she says about me in her diary is insanely nice. She goes on for pages and pages about how much she loves me and how she thinks I'm her soulmate and how she would do anything for me. I just can't understand why she thinks that I would leave her. Knowing that she's spent the last 3 years walking on eggshells around me, convinced that I would leave her at the drop of a hat is just so confusing and awful. I feel like our marriage is some kind of lie. The woman I thought was self-confident and ready to take on the world is actually full of self-loathing and really, really depressed. I don't know her at all. She's been suffering silently with depression long before we met. She has no faith in me, no trust. She thinks that every hug and kiss I give her and every "I love you" I say is a lie. I just don't know what to do. She obviously needs serious help, but I don't know how to get it for her. I can't tell her that I read her diary. If she has zero trust in me now, I can't even imagine what she'd think if she knew if I read 6 years worth of her private thoughts. I feel like I need to get my in-laws on board somehow, but I don't know what to say to them. I know I can't ignore this, but I feel like any move is the wrong move. 2 years ago my house burnt to the ground after being struck by lightning. Thankfully it was during the day, so our 3 kids were at school and my husband and I were at work. We lost everything, but we were safe. It took almost 11 months for the insurance to pay out. The insurance covered 1 month worth of hotel stays, but after that we were made to fend for ourselves, and the only option we had was to move in with my SIL. She tells us we can have her spare room and her office space. Since she used neither of the rooms and her stipulations was we needed to purchase all of our own food. and pay her $100 a week. By week 3, all of that changed. She then decides we need to pay her $250 a week and we can only use one room. So all 5 of us were crammed into the smallest room she had, which was the size of a glorified closet space and didn't even fit a twin bed and a small dresser. So we lived out of trash bags and slept on the floor for close to $1,000 a month some months, and still had to purchase all of our own food, despite her claiming my children on her food stamps. She also had no bills outside of her land tax, $450 a year, electric and heating oil, which she hardly ever filled. So we were essentially paying her so she could do leisure activities. It was the worst 8 months of my life. 3 months ago, my grandmother decided that she wanted to go to assisted living after a fall and transferred the deed of her house to me, and basically said it was mine now. It is a 5-bedroom farmhouse. My boys insist on sharing a room, so we have 2 extra bedrooms. Well, my sister-in-law lost her house last month due to not paying her land tax for several years and asked if her and her stepdaughter could stay with us until they get enough money to move down south. I said sure, 1 bedroom, $800 a month, and you have to buy and cook all your food separately because my daughter is vegan. She looked at me like I had 10 heads and said that she and her stepdaughter should not be made to share a room when there are 2 extra rooms, and stated she cannot afford a rent of $800 while purchasing all of her own food on top of it. I said, neither could we, but we managed to cram 5 people into a glorified closet space while you were getting $1,000 and food stamps. Take it or leave it. She decided to leave.